We are live.
Great. Welcome everyone to our webinar. This is a webinar about stopping the shock, which is banning the use of electric shock devices at the Judge Rotenberg Center. Many of you are likely familiar with our efforts to ban the use. Right now, it's really important that we put pressure on Congress, who can ban the device. We basically want them to include a ban in the end of year bill. We'll be talking about that a little bit more later. To start with, let's do introductions. My name is Avery Outlaw. I'm the Deputy Director of Operations here at ASAN.
I'm Zoe Gross. I'm the Director of Advocacy at ASAN.
Great. Let's go ahead and share the slides, please. Okay, great. So today, first we're going to talk about what is a Hill visit. Then we're going to talk about the JRC and Stop the Shock, especially focusing on how to talk to elected officials about it, like the common questions that they ask. And then we'll go over preparing for and doing a Hill visit step by step. So hopefully this webinar will prepare folks to make their own Hill visits. And then at the end, we'll also be doing some scenarios so people can see some examples of someone doing a Hill visit. Next slide, please. Okay, so Hill visit is when one person or a group of people passionate about the same issue meet with their legislators. A Hill day is when that's all coordinated around around multiple people doing Hill visits. So that could be on a local level where a group of people is all going to their state legislator to talk about an issue. Or that could be like what we're doing, which is a national one where we're asking everybody to meet with their individual legislators on a national level. So meeting directly with the offices, usually with a staff person. Most of the time, the legislators themselves don't come to the meetings. You're meeting with a staff person that handles policy decisions and things like that. So meeting with those staff people is the most impactful way to get your voice heard, more so than a phone call, more so than an email or a text message. All of those are great. And, you know, our community has been fantastic in keeping up the calls and the emails to their legislators to make sure that they hear our demands to stop the shock. But meeting directly with the staff members so that they attach kind of a personal face to the issue, so they know that we are committed and passionate enough to schedule these meetings, really demonstrates how important this issue is, and you're more likely to have your concerns heard and acted on. That's why we're doing this Hill visit campaign. And this applies to doing a Hill visit as in meeting virtually with your staff member in DC, which is something that a lot of offices started doing with the pandemic. So you can do that, or going to your district office for your senator in your state. You can do that in person. Either option will work for a Hill day. You can do whichever one is more comfortable for you. So on December 7th, ASAN is holding a Hill day where we're asking everybody to meet with their legislators to include a ban on the use of electric skin shock devices in the end of year omnibus bill. The end of year omnibus bill is basically a bill where they throw kind of everything that they wanted to get to this year, but didn't, into one bill. They have to pass an end of year bill to keep the government functioning and to avoid a shutdown. And so a lot of other things go into this bill. One of those things that we want to include is the ban on the use of electric skin shocks. There's also possibility for important things like healthcare funding that might be in this end of year bill, but our focus right now is on banning the use of electric skin shock devices. So today's training is going to talk about how to do a Hill visit and then how to customize your talking points to your legislator and to the issues that your legislator is passionate about. Next slide, please. Okay, so before that, we're going to do a quick overview of the JRC and Stop the Shock. We want to make sure that everybody's on the same page as the issue. And we're also going to talk about how to specifically message the JRC to legislators. Next slide, please. So the Judge Rotenberg Center is an institution in Massachusetts. This is the only place where skin shock devices are used. For many years now, it has used electric skin shocks as an aversive or punishment on people with disabilities. People are forced to wear a device that gives a painful shock. This shock is supposed to only be used for quote unquote dangerous behavior, but is in fact used for getting up, for taking off your coat without permission, for crying out in pain after being shocked, and many others. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. So this device is awful. ASAN and the rest of the autistic community has been working to ban it, as well as our allies have been working to ban it for decades now. So as a quick overview, what has been said about the device: in 2013, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Torture declared that it was in fact torture and should be stopped. In 2014, an expert panel at the FDA, which was assembled and heard testimony from survivors and from advocates, concluded that the use of skin shock devices should be banned, that it did cause harm. Unfortunately, that ban did not pass until 2020. And even so, that ban gave the JRC time to stop using the devices. And the JRC went to court to stop the ban. In 2021, the ban was overturned on a technicality. The court claimed that the ban didn't count because the FDA could only ban one thing for all of the ways that it could be used and not one specific way that it could be used. Because of that, today people at the JRC are still being shocked. This is why we are calling upon Congress, because Congress can pass this ban by giving the authority to the FDA to ban the device. And then that rule will go back into effect. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so here are frequently asked questions that we hear from Congress people when we've talked to them about skin shocks. It's very often their first time hearing about skin shocks and the Judge Rotenberg Center. So these are some common questions we get and some ideas about how to respond to them. So first question, what are the dangers? You want to reiterate that this is abusive, that this is painful, it causes trauma like PTSD, and that the JRC continues to use the device. They say they have safeguards at place. Those safeguards don't work. The skin shocks also can cause painful burns. A question that we often get is people asking, is this like electroshock therapy or ECT, electroconvulsive therapy? And the answer is no. Shock therapy is when someone uses electricity on someone's brain. It is used for people with depression and potentially other psychiatric disabilities. However, that is not the same thing. Skin shock is only used to cause pain. The point of it is to cause enough pain that the person will stop doing the thing that the JRC does not want them to do. So these are not the same things, and a ban on the skin shock devices will not affect ECT in any way. Let's go to the next slide, please. Another question that we get frequently is this the only option? This is something that the JRC says a lot in their messaging, is that this is the only option for people with disabilities or people with that severe of disabilities. And it's because the people who are on the device have tried everything else. That is not true. The JRC is the only facility in the United States and even the world that uses these devices, which means there are people with the exact same disabilities around the United States and around the world who are living in their communities and who have appropriate supports and services without the use of electric shocks or other aversives. They are not necessary. They are harmful and they are traumatizing. Another question that we very often get, especially from legislators, is what do Massachusetts senators and representatives think about this issue? This is a common question because this is seen as a Massachusetts thing because Massachusetts is where the JRC is located. So if you get that question, you can reiterate that Massachusetts offices, that we've talked to them, and both Massachusetts senators and as well as multiple representatives have shown support for bans against the devices. Let's go to the next slide. Another question that we really commonly get, because legislators very often want to know, like, what is the impact on their state, right? They want to know how many people are on the device. They want to know how many people from whichever state you live in are on the device. The answer is that we don't know the number of people on the device. The JRC keeps that information private. What we do know is that not everyone at the JRC is on the device. It is a small group of people who are on the device, and that you can find numbers for people who are at the JRC through the individual states' departments of education. So if you look that up, your state, but it won't say anything about who is on the device or who is not on the device. Okay. Those are some of the frequently asked questions that you might get. We'll go over this in a later section, but if you get a question you don't know the answer to, please just say, I don't know. Can I get back to you? That is a perfectly acceptable response. You're not expected to know everything about the issues, and the offices would much rather you hear you say, I don't know, than you trying to guess or come up with an answer. And saying, can I get back to you on that? Gives you an opportunity to follow up. So you keep the issue that you talk to them about important and in their minds. We'll talk about that more later. But to reiterate kind of our ask, we want the legislators to support the inclusion of a ban on electric skin shock devices in the end of year omnibus bill. You can call it end of year bill, you can call it omnibus bill, either way works. But that is the bottom line, and it's really important to emphasize what you want them to do when you are meeting with them. All right, next slide, please. Okay, Zoe, go ahead.
All right, so I'm going to talk now about visiting your legislator. We can go to the next slide. Just to give you an overview of the things that I'm going to talk about. We want to talk about how to think like a staffer in your visit, how to do research before your Hill visit, how to lay out the case for your ask, what to do during the appointed your visit time, and then what to do after your appointment. So we'll talk about what current and former staffers have said about Hill meetings, how you can be most prepared to give a Hill staffer what they want from a meeting, and just like how to have a good meeting, how to make the most of your time in the meeting. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, so thinking like a staffer. We have gone through some quotes from former congressional staffers. You'll hear a couple of them later, just to sort of drill down on what are the best or worst things a constituent could do in a Hill meeting. We'll take their advice and turn it into strategy for you. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so who are legislative assistants? Legislative assistants or legislative correspondents, legislative aides, or perhaps advisors in specific policy areas. Many different titles, but essentially you're going to meet with people that have the role of doing the research and constituent meetings to help inform the senator or representative they work for about the background on a specific topic. Legislators, they work on, hundreds of different issues over the course of a congressional period. And they can't do the research on every issue themselves, nor can they take all their own constituent meetings. So the people that work for them step in and do those things. And then after they've had the meeting or done the research, they report back to the legislator on the key points, the pros and cons of taking specific stances on certain issues, and then how the issues will affect their constituents. Next slide, please. Okay, so what are Hill staffers' biggest complaints about meetings that don't go well? One complaint that we often hear is it really bugs Hill staffers when people come to a meeting not having done their research. Now, this doesn't mean you need to know everything about your topic, so don't be too put off or intimidated by this bullet point. It's just making a case for knowing, the basic facts of your topic going in, knowing some stuff about the senator or representative whose office you're visiting, and we're going to talk you through how to do all that. It's also difficult for a staffer if you assume they already know what you're talking about. Just like the legislator they work for has hundreds of issues, the staffer may have, 50 or 60 different bills or legislative issues or topics that they're tracking all at once. So they may not have even the background information on what you're talking about. So it can help to come in prepared to give background information. Staffers don't like being deliberately misled or accidentally misled. So like Avery said before, if you're talking to a Hill staffer, they ask a question and you think in your mind, oh, I'm like 90% sure this is the right answer, but I don't know for certain. And then you say that and it turns out to be wrong. The Hill staffer feels that they've been lied to when they find out that what you said to them isn't true. So it's really important to just stick to the facts that you know, and we will talk to you about what to do if you're asked a question you don't know the answer to. The last thing that really bothers Hill staffers is if you come into a meeting without a specific ask, and the ask is what you would like them to do, the action step that you would like them to take after the meeting. Next slide, please. All right, so what do Hill staffers like to see in meetings? Hill staffers recommend that in the meeting you establish your credibility. If you work with a human rights organization, a disability organization, anything local in the state or district that they represent, you can name that. But also just being a constituent gives you credibility, and we're going to talk more about that later. So just make sure to establish like why they care what you're saying. And it is totally valid to be like, I'm your constituent and that's why I'm here today talking to you. Make sure to explain the basics. Again, don't assume the staffer will know what you're talking about. Lay out the details clearly. And it's fine to ask, like, are you familiar with this background information? And then go into it if they're not. They won't be offended if you ask that. Make your point personal and local. This is going to be a little bit tricky in this case because there's only one Judge Rotenberg Center. It's in a specific congressional district. Most of you won't come from that congressional district. So for most of you, you'll be talking to your Hill staffers about something that is not happening in your district or state. That's fine. We're going to talk some more about some stats and some approaches you can take to make it personal. But for now, I'll just say explaining why something matters to you can help make it personal to them. Stay brief and to the point, and then use the meeting to build a relationship with the congressional staffer because you may need to meet with them again on other disability issues. Next slide, please. Okay. So doing your research, when you research the member of Congress whose staff you're going to be talking to, it helps you see the links between your issue and the state or district they represent. You can learn what they're for or against. And then, for example, you'll know not to talk positively about like a policy that they oppose or might have a negative reaction to. It just helps you like know what you're going into. And it can help you find a connection between the issue you'd like them to start caring about and the things they already care about. So doing your research, it also shapes how you'll frame your case. It establishes you as a credible person when you have the facts and you're able to lay them out clearly. It makes you seem reliable to the Hill staffer. You're prepared for questions they might ask you, and you make a good impression. Next slide, please. Okay, so there are three key motivators of policymakers, and in this case, legislators. First is their values, ideology, and beliefs. Specifically their own view of their values, ideology, and beliefs. Second is the effect of a policy on their constituents. And the third is who is funding the policymaker. They want to do things that align with their beliefs and the image of themselves they put out there, but they're accountable to their constituents, the people who vote for them, and they want to do things that make them look good to their constituents. Lastly, they are going to take into account groups that fund their campaigns, and they would avoid doing things that alienate their funders. Next slide, please. So here's how to use the key motivators. Learning someone's values, ideologies, and beliefs helps you know what arguments they'll be receptive to or the arguments that won't work and you should avoid. And it teaches you what kind of language they use when they're talking about their beliefs and their core issues. And you can use similar language, similar rhetoric when you're framing your issue for their staffer. Knowing about the effect on constituents of a policy that you're talking about will let you use local information to show that the issue does affect your constituents. You can also connect a topic to their like the sort of pet issues or favorite issues of a representative or senator. And this doesn't have to be a connection like it doesn't have to be like a one-to-one, oh, this is exactly the same thing, and that's why they connect. It can just be like, I know that human rights are very important to you, and this is a human rights issue, just like that other bill you worked on. Finally, knowing who's funding a lawmaker helps you know whose support they can't afford to lose. They want to avoid doing things that would alienate their big funders. So even though this is something you should know, this isn't something you should mention during your visit. If you say like, I know you're funded by this coffee company, so I know you would never do anything that would make coffee drinkers upset. That's going to seem kind of aggressive and confrontational to the Hill staffer. It's just, you know, in the etiquette of congressional meetings, it's considered better to avoid talking about funders. So even though that's information you should know and use, it's not stuff you should be bringing into the conversation with the Hill staffer. Next slide, please. Okay, so what tools can you use to research the value, ideology, and beliefs of the representative or senator whose staffer you'll be talking to? Next slide, please. So you might think the first place to start is the member of Congress's site, and we will be looking at that a little later on. But it's more important to learn how they actually vote than what they say they believe. So You can go to ontheissues.org to find a legislator's position statements and quotes from them about their beliefs, generally to learn what they stand for. Then you can go to govtrack.us to find information about legislators' activity in Congress. So what committees they're on, how they voted on bills that they've co-sponsored or introduced, stuff that can get you into the specifics of like things they have supported, voted for, voted against in the past. Next slide, please. Using your legislator's voting history can help you form a connection with the staffer you're talking to. You can look for patterns about like, what does your legislator routinely vote in favor of or against, and see if you can connect your issue to something that they have historically supported. So for example, if you see your legislator has voted in favor of providing services to abuse survivors, you can say something like, I know this legislator really cares about victims of abuse because of your office's support of anti-violence programs in the past, which is why I feel they would want to know about what's happening to people with disabilities being subjected to this kind of aversive treatment at the Judge Rotenberg Center. So you can connect your ask to their issues. Next slide, please. Okay, what are some tools you can use to research the effect on constituents of a particular topic? We can go to the next slide. So for general demographics of statistics in your state or district, you can go to census.gov/mycd. CD there stands for congressional district. And this is a website that will give you really nitty-gritty information about the demographics of your congressional district. So this can be as fine-grained as like what percentage of people have what educational level. It'll also give things like race and age demographics. For disability-specific demographics, we don't have that broken out by congressional district, but we did find it broken out by state, and that's data from 2020. And you can find that at this site, disabledworld.com/disability/statistics/scc.php. This presentation will be up on YouTube later, so you don't have to like write all that down right now. You'll be able to look it up later on. But that'll help you at least say this amount of your constituents have a disability. Next slide, please. Okay, now's the point where we're going to go on the site of the member of Congress whose office you'll be meeting with. They should have a section on their website that's called Issues. Look through the drop-down menu, find out the different causes that they that are sort of their pet causes, their signature issues. And read through some of those, find out what language they use to talk about what they support and why. This will help you find a way to frame your issue through their point of view by drawing a parallel between it and one of their core issues. Next slide, please. Okay, so making your case. You understand what the staffer wants out of a meeting and how to research to prepare for the meeting. Let's talk about strategies for during the meeting. We can go to the next slide. Okay, making Stop the Shock personal to your legislator. Like I said before, this is one that can seem tricky because the Judge Rotenberg Center is just one place. It's in just one congressional district, probably not yours. But you can use the resources we've just discussed to find demographics information about disabled constituents in your district or state. You can find out how people talk about how the senator or representative talks about issues that are important to them and what policies they've historically supported. And you can use this information combined to make Stop the Shock relevant to your legislator by saying, for example, something like, I'm one of X number of your constituents who is disabled. The disabled community and our loved ones want to know that you support our rights to live with dignity and safety in our communities. I admire the way you've supported this relevant issue in the past, and I hope you'll support banning skin shock devices this year. So what that little blurb does is you bring home the relevance of what's going on at the JRC to their district by talking about the disabled population in their district, and you draw a parallel between it and something they've worked on in the past. Both will make Stop the Shock more personal to your legislator's office. Next slide, please. Okay. Let's talk about delivery and framing. And we're going to talk a little more about all of these things, but just as an overview, it's important to stay focused on your message. It's important to have respect for the staffer's time and job. They're busy people. You should, like we said, make the issue personal to the district, to the state, to the senator or representative, and make their motivations yours by talking about the things that they express are really important to them, but avoid partisanship. So talking about political parties or taking the side of one particular political party is something that Hill staffers don't like to see. All right, next slide. Okay, so delivery. Staying focused on your message. We have an acronym. It's similar to one you may have heard before, and less easy to remember, but more useful. KISSSS. Keep it short, sincere, simple, and stick to the facts. Short, your initial sort of pitch, getting to the point of your ask should be 2 minutes at most. Sincere, say what you mean, like express what you really believe about why this issue is important. Keep it simple. Try not to use confusing acronyms or throw out a lot of jargon specific to your issue without providing background, because remember, the Hill staffer doesn't know everything and they may not have background on your issue. And then stick to the facts. Don't make things up. And when I say make things up, I don't mean maliciously. I mean, like I said earlier, when you get asked a question and you're like, oh, I think it's this, but I don't know for sure. Much better to say you don't know than to guess. So when you don't know the answer, you can say, I don't know. Can I follow up with you on that? And this is great because it gives you an excuse to get in contact with them later and keep your issue on their mind. Next slide, please. All right, so having respect for the staffer's time and jobs. The first step here is not to act disappointed that you're meeting with a staffer and not their boss, because just the way the Hill works is most constituent meetings are with staffers, not with the legislator themselves. But the staffer is an important person who can relay what you have to say to the legislator. They're going to be the person that has more expertise in your area. They're going to take what you say and turn it into action if you can press the right buttons. So that they're not unimportant people. Always act calm and professional. This can be a tough one because we're asking you to talk about like a profound injustice, and it can be difficult to do that calmly. Again, this is just kind of like an expectation of how Hill meetings go. If you need to like practice saying what you need to say it in a calm manner, it's fine to be passionate. It's fine to show your genuine feelings. But if this is something that like you can't discuss without bursting into tears, that might present a logistical issue for your Hill visit. So act calm, act professional. Remember that staffers are there to gather information, and after a good meeting, they're more likely to get your message to their legislator. So make sure they get the information they're looking for, be informative, and offer to be a resource, so someone they can follow up with on this or similar issues. Here's advice from a former Hill staffer. You should not go on too long about whatever is on your mind. Get to the point and don't be disrespectful. Next slide, please. All right, making the issue personal. Like I said before, the reason that you're meeting with this Hill staffer is because you are their constituent. So your concerns to some degree become their concerns, which is a cool power you have. But you want to be letting the Hill staffer know why they should care about this issue and what makes it matter to you. Here's some advice from a former legislative correspondent. The best way to grab a staffer's attention is to make it a personal issue. When someone could make the issue relevant to the district or to me personally, it helped their effort and made it easier for me to relay their interests back to my boss. Next slide, please. All right, avoiding partisanship. Remember that you're meeting with your representatives' staff for a purpose, to express your concerns as a constituent. Definitely not to get into an argument or back and forth with them or anything that could damage the end goal of the meeting, which is to get them to take the action step you hope they will take. So if there's like a thing that your senator or representative has done that you find reprehensible, that's totally fine. Just don't bring it up in this particular meeting. You're focused on their ask. You should also not assume for an issue like this, which we're just something that we're like just coming to everyone to ask for their support. We shouldn't assume that people from one party will support and one party will oppose. We need to go in assuming everyone may oppose unless we educate them about why they should support the inclusion of the ban in the omnibus bill. And finally, don't bring up elections or campaign contributions. Like I said before, even if keeping these things in mind plays a role in how you're framing the issue, it's not something that the staffer wants to hear in the context of this meeting or particularly discuss. Next slide, please. All right, I'm going to hand it back to you, Avery.
Yes. All right. So now we're going to talk about building your scripts and preparing for what you're going to say. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so the basic structure of the meeting, before I start, I want to say you can bring notes into this meeting. You can refer to your notes. It's usually best if you're going to bring notes in to have them written out so people don't think you're like checking Facebook or Twitter in the middle of the meeting. But especially if you're using like your phone as an AAC device, feel free to look at the device for those purposes. But you can bring whatever notes will help you. I've known people in the past who will write out the entirety of what they want to say, including responses to possible questions in advance. I've also known a couple people who put it all in their AAC device so that they're prepared in advance. So please prepare in the way that works best for you. But the basic structure of the meeting is that first you're going to introduce yourself, you're going to establish that you're a constituent, right? Why they care, like Zoe talked about. You're going to say why you wanted a meeting, move into talking about the issues. That's that brief, like 2-minute overview of the issue that's important to you and what you want them to do. Next, you make your ask, again, what you want them to do. You want to give them a handout. ASAN has a handout. We'll talk more about it later, but this is a handout or a leave behind, which is a document that you can either give them or send them if you're meeting virtually, that basically summarizes the points that you talked about with your legislator about the issue, and gives them a reference. So if they're like, oh, I had this meeting but I forgot the name of the place, the Judge Rothman Center, the judge, whatever. We have this leave behind so that they have a reference. So we want to definitely give them that leave behind and then also follow up with them. We'll talk about that. So that they have those points and can follow up. We also want to get their business card. This is more relevant for an in-person meeting, but for a virtual meeting, you'll want to make sure that you have your email so you can follow up with that. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so we have scripts. You are welcome to use these scripts and modify them to work for you. But this does the basics. Introduce yourself, say who you're here with, tell them that you're a constituent. It also helps to establish kind of what town specifically. Sometimes they'll be like, oh, I went to college there, or something like that. You want to thank them for meeting with you. Definitely want to be respectful, like Zoe talked about. And it's also good to thank them for support on an issue. If you've done your research, you know potentially what you agree with them on, and you can mention that, especially if it's relevant to the disability community. Like, oh, I appreciate for your support for a bill that would ban seclusion and restraint in schools, for example. So for an example of this, you could say, I'm going to make up names here. Hi, my name is Sally Brown, and I'm here with the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. I'm a constituent of the senator, and I'm going to college in Williamsburg, Virginia. I really appreciate the time to meet with you. I also want to thank the senator for their support of, again, we'll say the Keeping All Students Safe Act that bans seclusion and restraint, for example. So you can say that, Bill. Again, like mentioning where you're from or what, if you go to school, is a really good way to network the complicated neurotypical system of networking. But it lets you start off the conversation and can make the meeting less intimidating if they're like, oh yeah, I went to the same college as you, or something like that. Next slide, please. Okay, so then you transition into talking about the issues. This is why you wanted a meeting. You can say, for example, I want to talk to you about the use of electric skin shock devices on people with disabilities like me. That makes it personal, that brings it home. So, and also why it's important to get the senators or Congress person's support in banning the device. Or I'm here today because as an autistic person living in Detroit, I'm deeply concerned about the use of electric skin shock devices on people with disabilities and want to make sure that the congressperson is representing disabled people like me. These scripts both bring home that you are their constituent. They have a legal responsibility to listen to you talk about the issues. That's their job as an elected official. Even if sometimes it doesn't feel like they listen, that is their job. So reminding them that you're a constituent, making it personal, saying I'm an autistic person, I am a person with a disability, this deeply concerns me, etc., are all good ways to get started. Next slide. Okay, so then you move into talking about the issues. This is where you'll want to have a 1 minute or 2 minute description of the Judge Rottenberg Center and why it's important that we ban the device. So again, not assuming that they know what the issue is at first, asking, for example, are you familiar with the Judge Rottenberg Center? You want to spell out the acronym and not say, are you familiar with the JRC? Because there are a lot of acronyms that potentially float around. So you can ask, I want to talk about the use of electric skin shock devices at the Judge Rottenberg Center. Are you familiar with the devices or the center? You can make it personal. Again, why do you care? Why should they care? You can say, I'm an autistic person that has been campaigning on this issue since 2015. It's very important to me as an autistic person that members of my community are not being painfully electric shocked. And then you want to briefly explain the situation. This is where you can apply all of the really good advice Zoe had about framing. So you'll want to summarize the situation, but you'll want to incorporate your congressperson's values or past bills into your description of the issue. So depending on what kind of issues they support, it can help you tailor this. So, you could say these devices have been found to have no positive impact and do cause harm, according to the FDA. The UN has condemned the use of the devices as torture. People at the JRC are shocked for things like getting up without permission. These devices are traumatizing to the people forced to wear them. This is a disability rights and disability justice issue. Or this is a human rights issue. You'll want to, again, tailor those to who you're talking about. In my previous example of someone who has supported the Keeping All Students Safe Act, you'll want to talk about how, like restraint and seclusion, this is hurting people with disabilities. We're asking for your support on this with your previous record of supporting the ban on restraint and seclusion. For example, if you're, and if, like what Zoe said, find a way to connect to issues. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so then we move into the ask. This is where you want to be really clear about exactly what you're asking for. If you had a bill number, this would be the time to mention the bill number. We don't have a bill number currently, but if you send to say end of year bill or omnibus bill, they will know what you're talking about, because that's what they're going to be focusing on the next month, is trying to get that passed. So, for example, I'm asking the senator or representative to include a ban on electric skin shock devices in this year's end of year omnibus bill, because right now people at the JRC, Judge Rottenberg Center, are enduring inhumane treatment via this device. With the senator's help or representative support, we can end this violence against people with disabilities. It's a very clear ask. You're saying what the action is that you want them to take. You're reiterating why it's important that they take that action. And there you go. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so after you've made the ask, it's very likely that they'll have additional questions. We covered some of those example questions earlier. This whole presentation is going to be on YouTube after this, so feel free to go back and take a look at those questions, take notes, or just remember what those frequently asked questions are. You can also look at ASAN's materials on the Judge Rottenberg Center to make sure that you're familiar with the issue. If they had a question that you don't know the answer to, again, like we said, I'm not sure, I'll follow up with you, or can I follow up with you on this, is important. It means that you're able to follow up with them, remind them that why the issue is important. So answer any questions that they have. Give them the leave behinds. That's the handout that we were talking about that has a summary of the issue and what we're asking them to do. That is in the chat for everybody. It's also at autisticadvocacy.org/stoptheshock. You can, then you want to get their business card or get their email so that you can follow up with them. And then we have final thanks and relationship building. That could be thanks again for taking the time to meet with you. I'll follow up with your questions as soon as possible. And I look forward to staying in touch on these issues moving forward. Is a really good way to do it. If you, for example, connected with that staff person because you went to the same school, you could do a callback to that or something like that. It's not my strong suit, but something like that to really make sure that they remember you and close out that meeting. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. After the meeting, again, like we said, you'll want to follow up with them. You want to use the contact information and that you got on the business card or over like the chat or when you were scheduling the meeting with them. You want to follow up and just send a brief email. You can copy and paste this script into an email and send that. But you want to thank them again. You want to reiterate the ask. This is what you want them to do. You want to reiterate why. And if they had any questions, you want to answer them now. Otherwise you can say, if you have any questions, you can reach me by email or something like that. And then just sign off the email. If they have questions that you don't know the answer to when you do your Hill visits about the JRC, you can email ASAN at info@autisticadvocacy.org. We might be able to help you answer the question or give you guidance on how to respond. So that is another option if you get a question that you don't know the answer to. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, we're going to quickly go over how to set up a meeting. So especially for people scheduling a virtual visit, we're going to go over how to do this. A lot of this advice also applies for people who are scheduling a meeting in person. Next slide, please. So You can request a meeting by contacting your member of Congress's office. It's a little intimidating. It doesn't have to be a phone call, which is very nice. But you can do it via a phone call. You can do it by email, or you can use a contact form on the legislator's website. For example, you might go to their website and see a place that says request a meeting. And then you can select, do you want to meet with their Hill office? Do you want to meet with their with the office in your local area, that kind of thing. You'll want to plan to make the appointment about 2 weeks before you want them to meet. We are only 1 week, a week and a half before our Hill Day. So if you want to schedule a meeting, please reach out and do it as soon as possible. You can do it tonight, right after this this call, send an email or do the contact form, or make a call tomorrow morning, or however works best for you, but make sure to schedule that. There's a possibility that you might not be able to schedule an appointment for December 7th, which is when we have our Hill Day. That is okay. You can do it another day. That is fine. It still has the impact of people reaching out and having those meetings. So schedule the Hill Day for whenever you're able to do that meeting. Next slide, please. Okay. This is a quick overview of how to schedule the meeting by phone. I'm not going to go over this in detail, but basically you call the general general Capitol Hill kind of like number, and they ask for your zip code, and they use that to figure out who represents you. So that is how that works. By email. By email, you can find the contact information at either of these 2 sites that are linked below. You can also go to their website or Google their name. Either of those things should work. Next slide. And here's a sample email. We like to make it easy on people. So if you wanted to schedule an email to schedule a visit, you can use this script and replace the information and send that off to your office. We ask people to include their home address because that proves that you're a constituent. Like we've said before, constituent means that they have to that part of their responsibility is to meet with you. So that's why they include that, and why they might ask for like your zip code when you're booking a meeting. Next slide. Okay, so what you should expect, we already talked about kind of the steps of the meeting, but as a quick overview, these meetings are pretty short. Usually they're not much longer than 15 minutes. They can go up to 45 if you are bringing up multiple issues and if it gets really involved. But usually, especially since we're only talking about one issue, these meetings are going to be pretty short. That is not a sign that it didn't go well or that they don't want to meet with you. That's just they are very used to having these meetings and like things to go quickly, and then they usually have another meeting. So keep that in mind when you are planning your meeting, but just go through the steps and don't worry too much about how long it lasts. Try to find out in advance what the format is and request any accommodations that you need. For example, doing it over making sure that you have a translator present, that kind of thing. You'll have to arrange that yourself usually, but find out if they prefer phone, if they prefer Zoom, or whatever format, so that you know in advance. And of course, if you're going in person, you should find out where the office is and plan to get there early, at least 15 minutes early, so that you have time to relax, read through your materials, and you have a buffer time of not being late. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so preparing in advance. We've talked about this. I'm just going to go over it. The leave behind. That's the document that you should send or give to the person that you meet with. It's got information for them about the bill. The leave behind for this issue is on our website. It is also linked in the chat right now. That's actually the talking points, but we'll get the leave behind in a second. But the leave behind, again, is what you'll want to give them. Talking points is a reference for you. This has a quick summary and of the bill and some important talking points to bring up. You can use this to prepare for your meeting. And then in advance, you also want to prepare any notes or scripts that will help you, like writing out what you want to say or doing quick bullet points about the issues, that kind of thing. You'll want to prepare those in advance and have those in front of you or up on your screen when you do the meeting. I have a quick pro tip of writing down the name of the senator and the name of the person that you're meeting with is a really good idea. It's very embarrassing to forget someone's name if you are meeting with them, or to forget the senator or representative's office that you're meeting with. That is my pro tip. Next slide. Okay. I'm going to pause here and see if we have any questions. I know we went over a lot of material. Hopefully people are feeling prepared to schedule a visit. Again, all of this is going to be on YouTube, so you can revisit and review. We also have a guide for scheduling a Hill visit, or guide for how to do a virtual Hill visit on the website. I'm going to pause here again, see if there are any questions. All right, I'm not seeing any questions. If people are still typing questions, we can do them in between our scenarios, or at the end of the scenario section. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, we're going to go over 3 different scenarios. These are different types of staffers that you might potentially encounter. A tentative interested staffer is what we hope for. Somebody who's really listening and definitely taking this information. Sometimes you will get a bored, distracted staffer, someone who's not paying any attention, or is just going, or is checking their phone during the meeting. That happens. If that does happen, you'll see it in our example, but the important thing is not to let it get to you, and just keep going, have the meeting, you still want to see if you can connect with them and bring up how important this issue is and give them the leave behind. It doesn't mean that, there's not a possibility that good might come out of it. There's also an inquisitive staffer, somebody who asks a lot of questions. That's a really good one to be prepared for, because again, there's a high possibility that you might not know the answers to some of those questions. All right, so first scenario we're going to do is an attentive, interested staffer. And Zoe is going to be our staffer, and I am going to be the person holding the meeting.
All right. Thank you so much for getting in touch with our office. It's always great to meet with constituents. Would love to hear what you are here to talk with us about today.
Yes, thank you so much for meeting with me. Like you mentioned, I am a constituent. I live in College Town, Virginia, and I have to say I really appreciate the senator's support of the Keeping All Students Safe Act earlier in this legislative session. I am a person with a disability myself, and it's really important for me to see the senator's support of the disabled community, and that's what I'm here to talk about, is another really important issue affecting people with disabilities. Are you at all familiar with the Judge Rottenberg Center or the use of electric skin shock devices?
I remember something about the user fee authorization, but no, I'm not very familiar.
Okay, yes, so the Judge Rottenberg Center is a institution in Massachusetts that uses very painful electric skin shocks as aversives on people with disabilities. This is, again, very harmful, very traumatizing. It has been condemned as torture by the UN Special Rapporteur on torture. And the disability community has been working to try and get a ban on the device passed. In the user fees bill, like you mentioned, the FDASLA, there was an amendment that would ban the use of the device. Sadly, however, the Senate ended up passing a clean version of the bill without that amendment. So what we're asking is that the amendment that would ban the use of the device is moved to the end of the year omnibus bill.
Okay, I know some other riders from FDASLA are being moved to the omnibus bill, so that makes sense. Yeah, so not knowing much about this, obviously the treatment sounds horrific, but is it necessary for some reason? Like, is it just for people who they've tried everything and nothing else has worked?
No, because this is only being used at one institution in Massachusetts, there are people around the United States and likely in Virginia as well, that have the exact same disabilities, that have the exact same situation, that are not on the device and are being treated in their homes and communities with home and community-based services. This device is not necessary. In fact, it causes additional disabilities and trauma. There are definitely alternatives, again, like the ones that you can see in our state of Virginia.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Obviously the senator wouldn't want to step on anyone's toes. So you said this was in Massachusetts. How do the senators from Massachusetts feel about this?
Yes, both of the senators from Massachusetts are against the use of the device and have supported a ban, as well as multiple representatives from Massachusetts.
Oh, that's good to know. Is there any particular senator's office that's leading this attempt to get the ban put in the omnibus bill that we should connect with?
Currently, no. I think people are still kind of getting their plans set up for the omnibus bill, but I am happy to stay in touch with you and let you know. I will say that Senator Murphy's office has been a leader on this in the past, and it's if you have any questions, they are a good office to contact.
Great, thank you. Well, okay, so I'll definitely take this back to my boss. Is there anything else you'd like to discuss today?
No, that's it. Thank you so much for meeting with me. Like I said, it's really important to the disability community that we get the ban passed on these devices, and we have an opportunity to do that. So the senator's support would be greatly appreciated in getting that passed.
Absolutely. Thanks for meeting with us.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
I have a, can I send you an email just with the updates to your questions?
Oh, yeah, sure. You can reach me at example.government. And I'd be happy to hear anything you have to say about updates to the situation.
Great. Thank you so much. I'll be in touch.
Great.
Have a good rest of your day.
You too. All right, so that was our first scenario. Now we're going to move on to the distracted and bored staffer. And we have Meredith here to contend with the distracted and bored staffer. So Meredith, go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much for meeting with me today. My name is Meredith Bartley. I'm here with the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. I'm a constituent of Senator Outlaw, and I'm actually from Coolsville. I think it's really cool how Senator Outlaw is also graduated from Coolsville High School. Go Fighting Bulldogs.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I also really appreciate how the senator supported the Keeping Coolsville Cool Act.
Right.
I'm here today.
The Keeping Coolsville Cool. Yeah, that's important to us.
Yeah, great. I'm here today because I'm an autistic person, and being from Coolsville, I'm actually really concerned about the use of electric skin shock devices on people with disabilities. And I wanted to make sure that the senator is representing disabled people like me. I want to talk to you about the use of electric skin shock devices at the Judge Rottenberg Center. Are you familiar with the devices or the center?
Not really.
Well, they're actually using a form of skin shock to treat people with intellectual and developmental disabilities to try to fix their behavior, but it's actually, they're being shocked for things as small as taking off their coat or screaming out in pain, because they are very painful and they are completely unnecessary. This is happening at one institution in Massachusetts called the Judge Rottenberg Center. And the UN has actually even condemned this as torture. It's really important to me as an autistic person, as a disabled person, and it really is a disability rights and a justice issue.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. I can see why you'd like something to be done about this.
Yeah, it's actually also incredibly expensive. It costs about $250,000 per year to keep people there. And I know, Senator Outlaw is on the Ways and Means Committee, and that would really help the state's budget. And what's good for states is good for the national budget.
Okay, I could see that.
Yeah, so I'm here today to ask the senator to include this ban on the electric skin shock devices in this year's end of the year omnibus bill, because right now people at this institution are enduring inhumane treatment on this device. With the senator's support, we can end this violence against people with disabilities.
Yeah, I'll definitely talk to my boss about this.
Great, thank you.
Do you have a document that I could show them?
Yeah, I do. Is your email example@example.gov?
Oh, yeah, it is.
Awesome. I can definitely send something over that you can share with the senator. It has more info about everything I've said today. Thank you so much for the time meeting with me. I'll follow up with those resources I just mentioned, and I really look forward to staying in touch on these issues moving forward.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Bye-bye. All right, Meredith, I think did a great job contending with the indifference of the distracted and bored congressional staffer. now we're going to have Alex, and I'll be the inquisitive congressional staffer.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for meeting with me. I really appreciate your time, Staffer Gross.
Yeah, absolutely. I love to meet with constituents. It's one of my favorite things.
I don't know if you recall, my name's Alex Grandstaff. I'm a constituent from Houston, Texas, and I appreciate, again, you taking the time out to meet with me today. I really want to talk about an issue that feels very important to me around human rights. And I know in the past, Representative Fletcher has done work I've really appreciated in terms of supporting Medicaid expansion, as well as supporting reproductive justice in ways that support people's individual freedoms. And so I'm really hoping that y'all will be interested in hearing about what I want to talk about today.
Yeah, absolutely. Shoot.
Yeah, okay. So are you familiar with either skin shock devices or the Judge Rotenberg Center?
I think the judge, I'm sorry, but this center is the one that they were trying to ban the devices they use in the FDA user fee bill, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I remember something about that, but if you could give me some more information that I could take back to my boss, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, of course. And I'll also, if you'll give me your email at the end of our meeting, I'll have a leave behind to send you that will have some additional information. But essentially, the reason folks were trying to get a ban done earlier this year is at the Judge Rotenberg Center over in Massachusetts, there are individuals who are being subjected to very painful electric shock treatments as a form of aversive control. And these have been shown to be very traumatizing. The UN has condemned them as torture. And this is shown to have no positive benefits while giving long-term harm. So we would like to see at the end of the year, in the end of the year omnibus bill, an inclusion of a ban on this device.
Now, I know that electroshock therapy is controversial, but I haven't heard it described as torture before. So this is a little bit new to me. What about people that need this treatment?
So actually, this is different than electric shock therapy. This skin device is much different than electric shock therapy in the fact that it is a wire that is put against bare skin and delivers a surface shock that is very painful, as opposed to electric shock therapy, which is used while the person receiving treatment is under sedation and is used for treatment of, say, depression and stuff.
So this is a different thing.
It is a different thing. It's a thing we're really trying to make sure that folks understand, so that way, like, the urgency is heard. And honestly, this is actually shown to be an ineffective treatment because there's folks all over the country who are getting care in their community that does not involve being the recipient of any kind of pain, that does not involve aversives, that supports them in getting their needs met. So it's really not a necessary thing.
Okay, that makes sense to me. When I go back to my boss with this, what can I tell Representative Fletcher about the effect on our district? Are there people from Houston who are being treated with this device, or who are in this center?
So I cannot tell you, unfortunately, if there are any Houstonians who are being subjected to this device, nor any Texans. That information is not like something that I can publicly access. I do know that Representative Fletcher can go to our State Department of Education to find out if anybody has been sent to the center. However, even though we don't have anybody, like I can't tell you today whether or not we have anybody there. As a disabled Texan, as an autistic Texan, this is very important to me, because the idea that it's just a fluke of the state that I currently reside in, that I have avoided being subjected to such a thing, it scares me. This is a huge issue for the autistic community, like, across the country, and is not it's not reasonable or right. I'm speaking personally. And I know 11.6% of Texans are disabled. So we have family members, and in addition to all of us there who are voting, who care about this issue, who want to know that our rights are protected, our loved ones and family members do as well. And this, I think, will mean a lot.
Absolutely. No, that's a really important point. Thanks for bringing that up. Do you have any thoughts on the bill to ban breakfast cereal that we introduced last month? I'd kind of an unrelated topic, but while you're here, I would love to get a disabled community perspective on that.
Oh, I don't know that I've seen that in depth. Do you mind giving me a little bit more information?
Yeah, absolutely. It bans the cereal for breakfast because we think it's not as healthy as eggs and bacon.
I mean, I worry a little bit that that could actually be an accessibility issue, given like cereal is a very straightforward meal to prepare. It requires no heating and can also be eaten dry if necessary. It's also something that, like, I know in terms of motor skills, like you can eat it with your hands if you need to. I understand the concern about nutrition, and I think that could potentially be addressed through a different means of making like incentives for more like nutritionally strong, either, I'm not sure if the concern is protein or processed sugars, but like making a cereal available that is better for people's base dietary needs, I think might be a better venue than full on banning cereal.
Oh, interesting. Well, this is more of a messaging bill. It's not likely to come to a vote this Congress. So I'll definitely talk to some other folks in the disability community and get their read before we reintroduce it in the next Congress. Maybe we'll make some of those changes.
Yeah, of course. And I'm happy if you would like, since I want to get your email, to pass this on. There's an organization I'm working with, Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, that may be able to help you get in touch with more disability advocates who could be interested in hearing about the cereal bill.
You know, I haven't heard of that autistic network, but I have heard of Autism Speaks. What do they think about this issue you were talking about before, the Judge Rotenberg Center?
I will speak candidly. Autism Speaks, as an autistic person and a self-advocate, I do not support Autism Speaks as an organization, since they ironically talk over the voices of autistic people and often ignore our needs and best recommendations for our well-being and care.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, that I didn't know that. Are there any other organizations, notable organizations that oppose the use of this electric shock device that I should tell my boss about?
I believe there are, but I'm sorry, off the top of my head, I cannot remember them. I'm very happy to get back with you on that. I'll include that in a follow-up email.
Oh, great. Yeah, that would be really helpful. Well, I've thrown a bunch of questions at you. Do you have any questions for me or anything else you'd like to touch base on before we end our meeting?
No, I actually really appreciate you taking this time with me and being so interested and engaged and asking me questions. Is there any other information that could possibly be useful to you around this?
I would love that list of organizations and the positions they take on the issue. Whenever you can get it to me, you can reach me at example@example.gov. And yeah, I look forward to hearing from you on that.
All right. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Absolutely. You too. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Take care.
All right. So I think Alex dealt very well with the random curveballs thrown by the inquisitive staffer. Those were our three example Hill visits. We just wanted to show you a range of attitudes or ways that staffers might be in the meeting, and how to deal with the various interest level and other like approaches that you might get.
Great. Can we go to the next slide? Okay. Before we wrap up, we'll do a quick recap. Remember, keep it short, sincere, simple, and stick to the truth. All good things to remember, especially while you're getting prepared. Don't discount personal connection. This isn't something that ASAN staff did here, but if you have a personal story that you want to share, maybe about an experience at an institution or something like that, even if it wasn't the JRC, that is something that you can do. But otherwise, just reminding them that you're a constituent, reminding them that people in your state or community care about the issue, that kind of thing. Use ASAN's talking points. Make sure to reference those talking points. You can use our scripts, however those would be helpful, to make sure that you're prepared going in. You'll want to avoid partisan politics. Like Zoe said earlier, don't assume that anybody is going to be against it. Don't assume that anyone's going to be for it based on your their political party. Research the issues that they personally care about, and use those to go forward. And again, if you don't know, say that. I don't know, can I follow up with you? Like we said, if you have any questions that you can't find the answer to, you can email ASAN info@autisticadvocacy.org. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, that was our Hill Day training. You can join us Wednesday, December 7th for a virtual Hill Day. You can tweet at us or let us tag us on Facebook and let us know that you're scheduling a Hill visit. Again, you can email at us if you had any questions that you don't know how to answer. Please encourage people in your community to come with you to the Hill visit or to schedule their own. It is really helpful. If you can't book a meeting on December 7th itself, that's fine. Book a meeting for whenever works for you. It's just really important that folks on the Hill hear from our community in the weeks before the end of the year. So keep it up. We want to do Hill meetings. We want to call, email, anything that works. Remember that if you have trouble making phone calls, ASAN has a proxy caller service where you can write what you want to say and a volunteer will make the phone call for you. And we also have a bunch of different resources about how to meet with your legislators that are all available on our website. Thank you so much for coming. Again, Wednesday, December 7th is our Hill Day. We'll also be back here live tomorrow to wrap up our ASAN's gala with a live stream where we'll be talking about ASAN's work this year. We'll be talking about and we'll be asking staffers some questions, that kind of thing. So feel free to tune into that. Everyone, again, thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for keeping up the fight to stop the shock, and have a good rest of your day.